Hi, second grade friends. It's Mrs. Lynn. You should be watching this on Monday, May 4th. This is this week's reading lesson. We're going to be working on comprehension with the 5W questions and a how question. We'll get into that in a second. For now, I just want to go over with you a couple quick announcements. Make sure you're getting on iReady and you're doing both subjects. I say this every week, but we are still not having everybody do iReady. So you have to make sure you're getting on to iReady. You should be doing it 30 minutes a day on Tuesday and Thursday at least. Definitely can do it more days of the week if you want to. Have to do both subjects. Some of you were doing reading and some of you were doing math, and a lot of you were not doing the other one. So you have to make sure you're getting on both subjects. Games are disabled on there, so I know that may have been like some of you got on and saw there weren't games, so you were like, okay, then I'm not doing the lesson. Don't do that. You have to get on, you have to do the lessons, okay? The teachers can see how long you were on for and what subjects you did, so make sure you're doing it. It's time stamped. We need you to do it. It's important. I think that might be it for announcements for right now. Okay, let's get into today's lesson. Okay, so we are going to use questions to monitor our comprehension. So that's a lot of fancy words. What on earth is comprehension? What is comprehension? Do any of you know? It's really important when you're reading. We're going to use questions today to monitor comprehension, and comprehension is showing you understand what you learned. If you're able to explain what you learned to someone, then you're showing that you comprehended it. Today, we're going to show that we comprehend a story by being able to answer 5W questions and a how. So what are the 5W questions and a how? They're question starters for us to use while we read to monitor our reading and make sure that we are comprehending what we're reading and we're not just reading and word calling. We're actually remembering what happened in the story and asking ourselves questions. So the questions are for the 5Ws: who, what, where, when, why, and then our how. So 5Ws and a how question. Now, you can ask yourself any who, what, where, when, why, how question as long as it pertains to the story. But this week, I'm going to give you predetermined questions that you're going to do so that after you read this week a fiction book on your own, you're going to want to stick with fiction. Next week, we move to nonfiction. You're going to use these questions to show that you comprehend, understand the story. So my who question for you this week are going to be, who are the characters? And our what is going to be, what is the problem? So these are the questions you're going to ask yourself for who and what. And we'll get into how you're going to show us how you understand that in a minute. You're going to have for where are the settings? And when do you think the story is happening? Okay. We're going to do why. Why do you think the author wrote the story? Remember, the author is the person who wrote the story. So why do you think they wrote the story? And our how does the problem get solved? So we're going to ask ourselves these questions while we read a story. It'll be your job this week on paper to write down who, what, where, when, why, how. You can put a little space at the top so you can write the title of the book you're going to do this for. You're going to answer those questions that I just showed you for the story we're going to do this week. I already did one for last week's story. Remember, we read Berenstain Bears and the Trouble with Friends. That was last week's story. I went through and I answered those questions. So for who are the characters, because remember that's one of the questions I'm answering. Who were the characters last week? They were sister, brother, Lizzie, mama, papa, and Lizzie's parents. So I wrote that all next to who. I know this is a little crazy for a minute, so just ignore down below. But I answered right next to it who were the characters. Now the question for what is the problem? So for what, I put Lizzie and sister got into a fight. That was what the problem was. So I wrote it next to it. For the next one now, it says, where are the settings? Where are the settings? So for where, I put sister's house, the front yard, Lizzie's house, and Lizzie's garage. So next to where, I filled in the settings. When do you think the story is happening? So that's an open-ended question, and that's when do you think, there's no right or wrong answer, but when do you think the author wrote the story? Now, in the past, in the future, it hasn't happened yet. For when, I think it happened in the past because we know how the problem got solved. We know how the story ends, so I think it already happened. So that's what I wrote in complete sentence in my box. And then for why do you think the author wrote the story? Now again, there's no right or wrong answer here. It's why do you think the author wrote the story? I think the author wrote the story to entertain us. They weren't trying to teach us really anything per se. I think it was to entertain us. And the last question was how does the problem get solved? I put Lizzie apologizes to sister, and they decide to take turns being the teacher. So I filled in all of my questions. And now you're going to do the same thing on blank paper, but for this week's story. So I'll show you the questions again at the end. But for now, I'm going to read you the story, Owen. And it'll be your job this week to answer the 5W questions and the how for Owen. So I'm going to read you the story here, and then I will show you the pictures. Okay, so Owen had a fuzzy yellow blanket. He had it since he was a baby. He loved it with all his heart. Do any of you have anything still from when you were a baby that you love with all your heart? I still have a stuffed Pooh Bear from when I was a baby that I love with all my heart, and we'll never get rid of it. Fuzzy goes where I go, said Owen, and Fuzzy did. Upstairs, downstairs, in between, inside, outside, and upside down. So there he is going everywhere, his little blanket that he named Fuzzy. Fuzzy likes what I like, said Owen, and Fuzzy did. Orange juice, grape juice, chocolate milk, ice cream, peanut butter, and applesauce cake. And there's all the little stains all over his poor little fuzzy blanket. Isn't he getting a little old to be carrying that thing around? Asked Mrs. Tweezers, their neighbor. Haven't you heard of the blanket fairy? Owen's parents had it. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. So their neighbor thinks Owen's just a little bit too old to be carrying around a blanket. I wonder what the blanket fairy is. That night, Owen's parents told Owen to put Fuzzy under his pillow. In the morning, Fuzzy would be gone, but the blanket fairy would leave an absolutely wonderful, positively perfect, especially terrific big boy gift in its place. I wonder if Owen's going to be okay with that. Owen stuffed Fuzzy inside his pajama pants and went to sleep. I guess he's not okay with it. He did not put it under his pillow. He's hiding it inside his pajamas. No blanket fairy, said Owen in the morning. No kidding, said Owen's father. No wonder, said Owen's mother. And there's the little Fuzzy in his pants. So no blanket fairy and no big boy gift. Fuzzy's dirty, said Owen's mother. Fuzzy's torn and dirty, said Owen's father. No, said Owen. Fuzzy is perfect. And Fuzzy was. Look how sad he looks when they're trying to take it from him. Very attached. Fuzzy played Captain Plunger with Owen. Fuzzy helped Owen become invisible. Likes to use his imagination. Get into trouble with his stuffed animal. And Fuzzy was essential when it came to nail clippings and haircuts and trips to the dentist. So all the things it looks like that scare him, he has to bring Fuzzy with him. Can't be a baby forever, said Mrs. Tweezers, their neighbor. Haven't you heard of the vinegar trick? Owen's parents had it. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. I wonder what the vinegar trick is. What do you think? I know vinegar is very tart and smells very strong. So maybe they're trying to make him not want to touch it, like the stuff you put in salad. When Owen wasn't looking, his father dipped Owen's favorite corner of Fuzzy into a jar of vinegar. Owen sniffed it and smelled it and sniffed it again. He picked a new favorite corner to chew on. So even though one corner of his blanket that he loved to chew on smelled very strong and bitter, he just switched to a different corner to chew on. Then he rubbed the smelly corner all over his sandbox. He buried it in the garden and dug it up again. Good as new, said Owen. So he got that smell of vinegar off. pages are stuck. Fuzzy wasn't very fuzzy anymore, but Owen didn't mind. He carried it and wore it and dragged it. He sucked it and hugged it and twisted it. Just loves his blanket, doesn't he? What are we going to do? Asked Owen's mother. School's starting soon, said Owen's father. Can't bring a blanket to school, said Mrs. Tweezers, their neighbor. Haven't you heard of just saying no? Owen's parents hadn't. Mrs. Tweezers filled them in. Neighbors a little concerned, aren't they? I have to bring Fuzzy to school, said Owen. No, said Owen's mother. No, said Owen's father. Owen buried his face in Fuzzy. He started to cry and would not stop. Don't worry, said Owen's mother. It'll be all right, said Owen's father. And then suddenly, Owen's mother said, I have an idea. It was an absolutely wonderful, positively perfect, especially terrific idea. I wonder what the idea is going to be, because he doesn't seem like he's going to go to school without Fuzzy, right? First, she snipped. Then she sewed. And then she snipped again and snowed some more. I wonder what she's making. How scared he looks. His blanket's getting snipped and snowed. Snip, snip, snip. Sew, sew, sew. Dry your eyes. Wipe your nose. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Oh. What did she make? Do you know what those are called? Something you can carry with you all the time. A little old school, but. Now, Owen carries one of his not so fuzzy handkerchiefs with him wherever he goes. So a handkerchief is kind of like a reusable tissue. You can clean with it, you can blow your nose with it, and you can throw it in the wash and clean it again, and then he can use it. So now he can take it with him to school and everybody will think it's a little handkerchief. And Mrs. Tweezers doesn't say a thing. So now whenever he sees her, she doesn't say anything to him because he's not holding a blanket anymore. He has a handkerchief, and so does she. She has a pink one. He's got his little yellow fuzzy one. So he found a way to solve his problem, right? Okay, so you're going to take a piece of paper, like I said. You're going to write down who, what, where, when, why, and how. You can put Owen at the top here because that's the story we're doing this week. We'll get into it in a minute. If you don't want to use Owen, you can use something else. But your question are, who are the characters? So who are the characters in Owen? What is the settings? I'm sorry, not what is the settings. What is the problem? So who are the characters? What is the problem? Starting to get a little ahead of myself. We've got where are the settings and when do you think the story is happening? Now this one, when do you think the story is happening? That's your own personal opinion. Do you think it's happening now? Do you think it happened in the past? Do you think it is happening in the future? Totally up to you. Why? Why do you think the author wrote the story? Again, your own personal opinion. Why do you think the author wrote the story? Are they trying to teach us something? Do you think it's just to be funny, to entertain us, to make us think? You tell me why you think. And then how does the problem get solved? So you're going to answer those questions on your graphic organizer that you're going to make on paper, and you will bring your answers to next week's Zoom for Owen. Now, if you don't want to do Owen, YouTube, you can find stories on there. My kids, Raz Kids, Reading A to Z, there's books on your level. Make sure you use fiction, books at home, storylineonline.net. Those are all good choices. Make sure it is a fiction story, a story that cannot happen in real life, even if it seems realistic. It's a story where you can, in fact, actually go see those characters. Next week, we switch to nonfiction. For now, stick with fiction, okay? So 5 W questions and a how. You're monitoring your comprehension, and remember, comprehension is what? Showing you understand what you learned, okay? We'll see you all next week. Have a fabulous week. We love you all. See you Wednesday, okay? Bye.